The rain fell steadily that November evening, turning the streets of Portland into rivers of reflected light. Margaret Chen gripped the steering wheel of her old station wagon, her daughter Emma sleeping peacefully in the back seat after a long day at kindergarten. Margaret was tired. At 32, she felt much older, working double shifts at the diner, paying bills that never seemed to end, raising Emma alone since her husband left 3 years ago. Some days, the weight of it all pressed down on her shoulders like stones. But tonight, something made her slow down. Through the rain-streaked windshield, she saw him. An elderly man, perhaps in his 70s, walking slowly along the roadside. He wore a dark suit that was soaked through, and he carried a brown leather briefcase that looked as old as he did. His white hair was plastered to his head, and even from the car, Margaret could see him limping. She should keep driving. She was exhausted. Emma needed to get home and have dinner. They'd already had a long day, but Margaret's mother had raised her differently. She pulled the station wagon to the curb, rolling down the passenger window. The rain immediately began spattering inside. "Excuse me, sir?" she called out gently. "Are you all right?" The old man stopped, turning slowly. His face was lined with years of living, his eyes a soft blue that held both surprise and wariness. Water dripped from his nose and chin. I'm fine, thank you," he said, his voice quiet but dignified. "You don't look fine," Margaret said, not unkindly. "You're soaked through." "Where are you headed?" The man hesitated. "Oak Street, number 47. My car broke down about a mile back. I called for a tow, but—" He paused, looking embarrassed. "I suppose I thought I could walk home before the rain got worse." Margaret made a decision. "Get in. Let me take you home." "Oh, I couldn't impose—" "Please," Margaret said firmly but warmly. "It's no trouble at all. You'll catch your death out here." The old man studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. He walked carefully around to the passenger side and opened the door, settling into the seat with a soft groan. Water dripped from his clothes onto the worn upholstery. "I apologize for the mess," he said quietly. "Don't worry about it," Margaret replied, pulling back into traffic. "This car has seen worse, believe me." In the back seat, Emma stirred, her small voice sleepy. "Mommy, who's that?" "Just a friend who needs a ride home, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." The old man turned slightly, looking at the little girl with her blonde pigtails and pink dress. A small smile crossed his weathered face. "She's beautiful," he said softly. "Thank you. She's my whole world." They drove in comfortable silence for a few moments. Margaret noticed the man's hands were shaking slightly. Whether from cold or age, she couldn't tell. "I'm Margaret, by the way. Margaret Chen." "Thomas," the man replied. "Thomas Whitmore." "And I'm very grateful, Mrs. Chen. Just Margaret is fine, and it's really no trouble." Thomas looked out the window at the rain. Not many people would stop these days. "The world has become cautious." Margaret nodded. "I understand that, but my mother always said that kindness doesn't cost anything except a moment of your time, and sometimes a moment is all someone needs." Thomas turned to look at her, his blue eyes suddenly bright. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Margaret said softly. "She passed 2 years ago. I'm sorry." They continued through the rain-slicked streets. Thomas directed her through several turns until they reached a quiet neighborhood of older homes, each with large yards and tall trees. The houses here were well-maintained, elegant in that timeless way that spoke of quality and care. "It's just there," Thomas said, pointing to a beautiful 2-story colonial with white columns and dark shutters. Even in the rain, it was impressive. Margaret pulled into the circular driveway, surprised by the grandeur of the home. Thomas noticed her expression. "It's too big for me now," he said quietly. "My wife passed 5 years ago. Our children live across the country, but it's home. All our memories are here." Margaret understood that feeling. Memories were sometimes all we had left. Thomas opened the door, then paused. "Thank you, Margaret, truly. Your kindness tonight, it means more than you know. Take care of yourself, Mr. Whitmore." "Thomas, please." She smiled. "Thomas." He stepped out into the rain, then leaned back down. "If you ever need anything, Margaret Chen, I hope you'll remember this address. 47 Oak Street." Before she could respond, he closed the door and hurried as quickly as his old legs would carry him to his front door. Margaret waited until she saw him safely inside. lights coming on in the windows before she drove away. The next morning started like any other. Margaret was making Emma breakfast when the doorbell rang. She glanced at the clock. 7:30, too early for visitors. Opening the door, she found a well-dressed woman in her 50s, holding a clipboard and wearing a professional smile. Margaret Chen? Yes? My name is Patricia Holmes. I'm an attorney with Whitmore and Associates. May I come in? I have some important information to share with you. Margaret's heart dropped. An attorney? What had she done? She let the woman in, her mind racing through possibilities. They sat at the small kitchen table while Emma ate her cereal, swinging her legs and humming to herself. Patricia pulled out several papers. Yesterday evening, you gave a ride to Thomas Whitmore. Is that correct? Yes, Margaret said slowly. Is he all right? Did something happen? He's fine, Patricia assured her. But he contacted me this morning with very specific instructions. She slid a document across the table. Margaret stared at it, not understanding what she was reading. I don't understand, she finally said. Patricia smiled gently. Thomas Whitmore is a retired businessman. He built a successful company over 40 years ago and sold it when his wife became ill. He's been living quietly since then. But yesterday, your act of kindness reminded him of something important. She pointed to the document. Thomas has established a trust fund for your daughter, Emma, $50,000 for her education. Margaret felt the room spin. What? No, I can't accept that. I was just helping him. I didn't do it for... He knows that, Patricia interrupted gently. That's exactly why he wants to do this. He said your kindness reminded him that there's still goodness in the world, and he wants to ensure that goodness is passed on. Tears began streaming down Margaret's face. She couldn't speak. Patricia continued, her voice warm. There's more. Thomas also owns several properties, including a small restaurant space downtown that's currently vacant. He's offering you a 5-year lease at a significantly reduced rate if you're interested in starting your own business. I can't, Margaret whispered. Thomas told me something this morning, Patricia said, leaning forward. He said that for the past 5 years, since his wife died, he's been walking through life waiting for it to end. Yesterday in the rain, he felt invisible, forgotten, like the world had moved on without him. And then you stopped. You saw him. You helped him. You reminded him that he still matters. She placed her hand over Margaret's. This isn't charity, Margaret. This is gratitude, and it's his way of making sure your kindness creates ripples that continue spreading. Emma looked up from her cereal. Mommy, why are you crying? Margaret pulled her daughter close, holding her tight. Happy tears, baby. Just happy tears. 3 months later, Margaret stood in front of her new restaurant, Emma's Kitchen, watching the sign being hung. It was a small place, cozy and warm, specializing in comfort food made with love. Thomas Whitmore stood beside her, leaning on a cane but smiling broadly. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly. She would have liked you, Margaret replied. She always said the measure of a person isn't what they have, but what they give. Thomas nodded. My wife used to say something similar. She said that we're all just walking each other home. Some journeys are short, some are long, but we're all going the same direction. The least we can do is help each other along the way. Emma ran up, her blonde pigtails bouncing, holding Thomas's hand. In the months since that rainy night, the old man had become like a grandfather to the little girl. His eyes sparkled with joy that had been missing for years. Grandpa Thomas, when can we eat inside? Soon, sweetheart. Very soon? Margaret watched them together and thought about that rainy November night. She'd been tired, overwhelmed, ready to just drive past and get home. But something had made her stop. Some voice inside that sounded like her mother's, reminding her that we're all in this together. One moment of kindness. That's all it had been. One moment where she chose to see another person's struggle and help. And it had changed everything. Not because of the money or the restaurant, though those were wonderful gifts, but because it had reminded both of them of something essential. We need each other. Young and old, struggling and comfortable, different but the same. We're all just walking each other home. The sign was finally in place. Margaret took a deep breath. Ready to start this new chapter? Thomas asked. She looked at her daughter, at this kind man who had become family, at the restaurant that represented hope and new beginnings. Ready, she said. and through the window she could almost see her mother smiling, proud of the woman she'd raised. A woman who knew that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes. Sometimes you just have to stop in the rain,